Good evening. The date is June 15th, 2023. Welcome to the San Marino Unified School District Board of Education meeting. Here's our board president, Shelley Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Hong. I would like to call to order and open our regular session. It is approximately 7:07. Okay, I'd like to do roll call. Mrs. Lam?
Aye.
Mrs. Gill?
Here.
Mrs. Sean?
Here.
Mr. Chang?
Here.
Mrs. Ryan? Aye. And now I'd like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, let's begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. All right. Before I ask for approval of the agenda or a motion for the approval, the meeting agenda was distributed on Monday, June 12th. The staff has requested an amendment to the agenda to include a public hearing and comment on the use of the ESSER III funds for a design build HVAC project pertaining to GC 4217 with ABM. We need immediate action for this item, and it is needed, and it's come to our attention after the agenda was distributed. Notifications regarding the public hearing and comment were posted in a timely manner. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the amendment to add a public hearing and comment on the use of ESSER III funds for a design build HVAC project pertaining to GC 4217 with ABM? Wow,
That's
that's a mouthful.
I so move.
Thank you, Mrs. Gill.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. And so with that, is there any further discussion? All right, so roll call vote, Mrs. Lam,
Aye.
Mrs. Gill,
Aye.
Mrs. Chan,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so with that, there is approval of the agenda. Next, we have the approval of the minutes for May 23rd, 2023 Board of Education meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the 5/23/23 meeting minutes?
I'd like to move to approve, but with a modification. So there's a correction. Angela Wen, she's a middle school student, not a high school. Yeah.
Okay, so with that correction.
Second with the correction.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chang. Thank you, Mrs. Gill. And with that, I would like to do roll call vote for the Board of Education meeting minutes.
Aye.
Thank you, Mrs. Lam, Mrs. Chan. Sorry, Mrs. Gill.
Aye.
Mrs. Chan,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so the minutes have been approved. Next, Board of Education special meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve this June 1st, 2023 meeting minutes?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Mrs. Lam.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Gill. And with that, I'd like to do roll call. Mrs. Lam,
Aye.
Mrs. Gill,
Aye.
Mrs. John,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
and Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so the special board meeting for June 1st has been approved. Now there is special meeting minutes for June 2nd. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the June 2nd special board meeting minutes. Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Gill and Mrs. Lam. And with that roll call, Mrs. Lam,
Aye.
Mrs. Gill,
Aye.
Mrs. Chun,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And now all three of the meeting minutes have been approved. San Marino Unified School District Spotlight. At this time, the Board of Education would like to recognize the San Marino High School Moot Court team. I'd like to turn it over to Davis Liang and Yenny Chow. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kurtenbach.
I was going to do a little intro before
Okay.
we set them off. For those of you who don't know, and I didn't until this year, the National Association of Moot Court Tournament featured these two excellent students, Davis Liang and Yanni Chow. And they were recognized as not just the best in California, not that's just the best in our region, but absolutely the best in the entire nation, placing first. This remarkable recognition has resulted in our school, San Marino High School, being ranked as the #1 moot court program in the nation, all within just 2 years of us attempting to start this program. The team's exceptional appellate advocacy skills, I didn't write that, that's Mr. Piccone. I don't know what half those words mean. Legal analysis and eloquence were evident throughout the rigorous preparation, including case research and practice rounds. Their dedication, teamwork, and the guidance provided by their coach, Paul Landau. Paul, please wave. Thank you. Have led to this impressive achievement. Mr. Landau is the coach of our school's team. He's also a close friend of Mr. Piccone, the school's mock trial teacher and coach. Congratulations to these remarkable moot court team members for their outstanding accomplishments. Your success is a testament to your hard work and talent. Please join me in congratulating Davis Liang and Yanni Chow, who I now welcome to speak on the behalf of their team and their experience.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtenbach. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Dr. De La Torre, and all other guests at the meeting tonight. My name is Davis Liang, and when school starts back up again, I will be a junior at San Marino High School. I'm a member of the mock trial team, a captain on our debate team, and of course, a member of the SMHS moot court team. I'm joined here today by one of my best friends, Yanni Chow, also a rising junior at SMHS and a member of the debate and mock trial teams with me. She's my partner for moot court, and I truly, on every level imaginable, could not have done this without her. At San Marino High School, our moot court program is still rather new, being founded in late 2021 by now graduates Nicholas Liu and Timothy Jin, who are currently in Phoenix, Arizona for the National Speech and Debate Tournament. This is all to say, however, that our program has existed for exactly 2 seasons of competition. And since moot court is a partnered event at its inception, there was only a single team competing, the aforementioned founders. However, after Nick and Timmy's diligent work recruiting for this past competition season, I'm happy to report that the San Marino team has ballooned in size, now boasting a whopping 2 teams. This would soon prove to be a disadvantage for us, as moot court is one of the most challenging forensic extracurricular activities, involving rigorous attention to detail and a truly immense amount of reading precedent decisions. After all, it is intended to be a simulation of real Supreme Court oral argumentation, so it's going to be intense. For instance, this year we argued the constitutionality of an affirmative action program relating to Native American health disparities and 10th Amendment balance of power and state and federal power in regard to economic coercion, which are all very big words. Yet, despite the challenge of the event itself, coupled with our small team size, Yanni and I were able to make it to the final round of both the Cornell and UC Santa Barbara invitationals, and our high placements at those tournaments qualified us for the national tournament held in May of this year. For a first-year team, it's not a bad record, and at San Marino, we work closely with Mr. Paul Landau, who acts as our coach for moot court and registers us for tournaments. He also works with a few other schools in our area to create what he has dubbed Team Landau. Yanni and I, for our parts, certainly put in the time aggregately over the entire season. We easily spent hundreds of hours poring over every detail in our case, whether that would be in long, late night calls, studying precedent with Timmy and Nick, or weekly practices with the rest of Team Landau. However, with only 2 San Marino teams, absent a clean win, our school's overall ranking was stuck at 4th place. After the Santa Barbara Invitational, there was only one tournament left on our calendar, Nationals. And only those who were able to qualify by placing well at the previous tournaments are even allowed to compete. In preparation for nationals, Yanni and I ran into an unexpected problem, which was final exams. As it turns out, the weekend of the national tournament just so happened to be the weekend before finals week, which meant that between rounds, Yanni and I were desperately trying to cram as many math and chemistry units into our heads as possible. In other words, not the best headspace for competition. And yet, after a grueling weekend of competition, the dust settled with us as the national champions. This also had the desired effect of catapulting San Marino into the overall highest rated moot court school in the country. And I'll admit, it feels a little strange to be giving a speech about myself, but I'm truly so proud of the progress that we have made in such a short time. And I'm excited to continue our winning streak. Having now said goodbye to those that got us into moot court as they head off to their post-high school lives, Yanni and I will be taking over the team next year with ambitions to sustain and expand what is a small but flourishing community. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it.
Wow.
Before you sit down, Yanni and Davis, we're going to present you with certificates recognizing your placement as national champions. And so I'd like you guys to come front and center, and we're going to take a picture for it. Mr. Nando, will you please join us? Yes. Thank you. And we are so impressed with your, being able to go through competition, especially when you have finals on your minds. And the two of you are just standout rock stars. And so we want to congratulate you on this wonderful achievement. And you really are elevating your high school, our school district. And we want to congratulate you and just tell you that we are so impressed. And so thank you so much. Absolutely.
I was excited when I heard the
The way that looked with this was staying fully out of the way.
You'll stay here. Yeah, we have to switch to the. All right.
One, two, three. Thank you. Congratulations.
No pressure.
Just do it again. Just do it again. Just do the national. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wait, I'm singing the wrong song. Sorry.
Thank you
so
much. Thank you.
How many kids?
Would
Would be the first time. No, I'm just kidding.
Um,
Remember the limo ride?
Yes, I do.
Kidding. Okay. Those kids are so impressive, aren't they?
We are.
Oh, very artsy.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So what, two more years of them?
So impressed. So articulate.
Nice. Not a bad track record. So are you an attorney too?
Oh, nice.
No, we.
Oh, I'm happy to.
Read to you and Angel, Kelly and I and Jason and Sam.
Yeah.
So much fun. Impressive.
Oh, no.
They amaze us. Like,
Yeah.
thank you.
First time they go out.
Very much. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Yeah.
Congratulations, sir. Thank you for all of your mentorship and coaching.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kleinrock.
Thank you. Wow. This was their first year too,
Yeah.
so. All right, our kids are scary impressive. Okay. I have no idea where I am. Okay, here we go. Public comment. The Board of Education has adopted board policy 9323B to ensure the public's right to be heard in any matters pertaining to the San Marino Unified School District. Persons who wish to provide public comment will have three options to submit public comments. First, they may submit through an online form. At 3:30 this afternoon, there were no submissions. Number two, they may request to speak during the meeting via Zoom. Ms. Rong, will you do the 1 minute?
Sure. We have 20 seconds. No comments online.
Thank you. Next, request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. Ms. Delatoria, are there any cards? All right, there are no cards at this time. Public hearing. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Lana Richter to conduct the public hearing.
Thank you, President Ryan. The Board of Education is to conduct a public hearing to discuss the proposed local control accountability plan in accordance with Ed Code 52062. Today's public hearing was communicated to the public in the Tribune newspaper, and the proposed LCAP was posted on the district's webpage and the district office for public review. Before adoption, the local control accountability plan shall be presented at a public hearing before the governing board for review and comment by members of the public. Mr. Hong, please pause the meeting for 1 minute to take public comment.
We have 20 seconds. We have no attendance, no hands online.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Richter, that concludes our public hearing.
Yes.
Okay, next, public hearing. At this time, I would like to turn over to Dr. Michael Lin to conduct a public hearing.
Thank you, Board President Ryan, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Delatorre, and Executive Cabinet. Item 9B is to hold a public hearing and comment on the 23-24 proposed district budget. Mr. Hong, let's pause for a moment to take and capture public comments.
We have 20 seconds. We have no comments online.
Thank you. And this concludes the public hearing section. All right.
Hearing for the.
Yes, that's next. Okay. So public hearing at this time, I would like to turn it over again to Dr. Michael Lin to conduct a public hearing.
Thank you, Board President Ryan. This item is to hold a public hearing and comment on the use of ESSER 3 funds for a design build HVAC project pertaining to Government Code 4217 with ABM. This is in relation to Resolution 12 later to authorize the execution and delivery of an energy services contract for the acquisition, construction, and installation of energy conservation facilities and an equipment purchase agreement with respect to the implementation of proposed air quality improvement and energy efficiency measures made possible by ESSER 3 restricted federal funds. This was posted on June 1st, many days in advance of this meeting. Mr. Hong, let's pause for a minute to take public comments.
We have 20 seconds. We have no comments online.
Thank you. And that concludes our public hearing section. Next, 10, we have a consent section. Do I have a motion to approve the consent section A through J?
I move to approve the consent section items A through J.
Thank you, Mrs. Gill.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Lamb. Is there any further discussion? All right, I'd like to do roll call vote. Mrs. Lamb,
Aye.
Mrs. Gill.
Aye.
Mrs. John,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so the motion has passed to approve consent section A through J. Communication section from the Board of Education. We ask that each board member take no more than 2 to 3 minutes to share their communication. Let's begin with Mrs. Lamb.
Hi, thank you. So last week on June 6th, I attended Masters in Governance training course on community relations and advocacy. And on June 7th, I attended a second Masters in Governance course on governance integration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lamb. Mrs. Gill.
Well, since we've been here last, we all attended all 4 graduations or promotion ceremonies, which were just so great seeing how proud the kids are of themselves, and they're so accomplished. And I just feel like we're sending them off in such a good place. I really enjoyed our board special meetings on June 1st and 2nd at the Huntington. Thank you, Mr. Chang, for arranging that. It was just so nice to put together the goals that we're going to be implementing or have our first pass at all the input. And it's just so reassuring that our board really is of one voice, and we have really individual, unique viewpoints that we all just have one goal, is to do the best we can for our kids. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Gill. Mrs. John.
Thank you. In addition to the school programs, I actually attended a Music Center Spotlight program where 2 of our students, one was a former Huntington Middle School student, Tiffany Sue, participated as a classical singer.
And Nathaniel Yu, who is a rising junior, plays cello. And this is an incredible program filled with mentoring and the students apply. And what's great about it is it's not just a competition program, but it's about getting the opportunity to work with masters in master classes once they go through different levels. And at each point of their auditions, they receive feedback from the judges about things that they can improve upon. So whether it's the first round of video submissions or the classes for the semifinalists, they continuously receive feedback to improve their practice and find a community. This particular program has been around for about 35, 40 years. People coming out of it are Josh Groban and Misty Copeland. I mean, huge names. And so it really sets up the students for this tremendous amount of success. And so it was very thrilling to see a former HMS student and a current San Marino High School student perform. So something we might want to think about if we can find ways to encourage our students to participate in that.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Chang. Mr. Chang.
Before attending the full school graduation, the day we have a grand night light up, so I attend the PTA affiliate dinner gathering. And also I attend the San Marino City of San Marino Memorial Service at the Lacey Park. And then after graduation, I attend the San Marino High School speech debate banquet. And then thank you for City Club president. You know, I also attend the City Club the summer freestyle at the Omea. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chang. With that, I was pleased to attend Light Up, Valentine Huntington Middle School and San Marino's promotion and graduation. I want to offer my condolences to one of our board members, Mrs. Gill. She on May 26 said goodbye to her uncle, Jay Cervenka, who's been a longtime community member here in San Marino. 5/26 was San Marino High School, as well as grad night, Memorial Day ceremony. It was just an incredible ceremony put on by our very own Mitch Lehman, but also our very own student was a speaker, and he spoke about resiliency and his journey towards West Point, and then what happened subsequently. So just a very powerful speaker. I want to thank Mr. Chang in helping us to celebrate and thank our Caltech partnership and program. On June 1st and 2nd, I had the pleasure of working with our board to establish board goals for 2023-2024. Speech and debate banquet was lovely. Unfortunately, I was not able to stay for the whole thing, but I know my two colleagues here were able to attend. CEO installation dinner, Pasadena Asian American Pacific Islander meeting on the 10th. And then for 4 days, I attended an Equity Institute, and on the 13th, City Club Fiesta. Thank you to City Club. That open mic is a little bit dangerous for some of our, yeah.
That's true.
Okay. Dr. Delatorre.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the board. I was unfortunately unable to attend that wonderful City Club fiesta because Dr. Richter and I attended the Leadership Associates Summer Institute. And it was a really good time to reflect on leadership. And there were many, many superintendents from up and down the state there, along with assistant superintendents. And we were fortunate to have Stephen Covey be our session speaker. And he talked a lot about his book called Trust and Inspire. And it's about a leadership style that really respects people's capabilities and understands that people want to be led. They don't necessarily want to be managed. And with 5 different generations of employees in the workforce now, there are many, many ideas and philosophies about how to lead. And this is one of the strongest that Dr. Richter and I have seen in a very long time. And so we are super excited to bring that to San Marino. And I would like to share that book with the Board of Education. So I'm going to be ordering a copy of that book for all of you. In addition, today we were able to go to see the anatomage tables that we received a very generous donation for at San Marino High School. And the San Marino Tribune was there to photograph some of our students who have signed up for our Medical Arts Academy for next year. And we got to actually do some hands-on work with the tables. Thank you, Mr. Kurtenbach, for setting up the room. He was there interacting with the kids and with the tables, as was Dr. Richter. Mr. Chang has done so much for the medical arts program. I'd like to thank him for his participation and support of that program as well. And then Stephanie Duncan, the president of PT Affiliates, whose organization donated $400,000 for these anatomage tables. I would like to arrange a time for the Board of Education to come up and see the tables, interact with them for a bit. You will be incredibly impressed with what these tables can do and what they're capable of doing. The technology is amazing. And speaking of which, we will be going to Rotary next Thursday on June 22nd. To do a presentation about the medical arts program and how we have used the Rotary's generous grant of $25,000 in the program that's coming up next year. And so the board may recall that we purchased iPads that will be used in our medical arts program, along with a tool called Precision OS, which is a virtual reality tool that students will be using to transport themselves into operating rooms and to actually step them through the process of operating on a virtual patient. So we're really excited about that program coming up. I know Mr. Kurtenbach has done a lot of work to get PCC on board with that. And so we have, how many kids signed up now?
76, I think.
76 kids signed up for this program for next year. And we're very, very excited. And the kids in the room today were really excited, very enthusiastic. So good things coming. Thanks to the board members for their support in those things. That's it. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Delashore. And our student board member, of course, is on summer. Information items. At this time, I would like to turn it over to San Marino High School, Mr. Jason Kurtenbach, for the 2023 college admissions report.
Thank you, Superintendent De La Torre, President Ryan, members of the board, executive team. Come to you today with really great news. And actually, we're going to see a lot of our metrics are getting stronger and stronger as we go through this presentation. Mr. Cassim Clay is ill. He went to a wedding in Mexico. He came back. I'm pretty sure he picked up something there, and none of us want to pick that up from him. But he sends his regards. And we're both really proud of the work that our students have done, our teachers and our counseling team. So let's start with these metrics. We'd like to get a good idea of what our class looks like. Obviously, we have a much smaller senior class than we did the year prior by about 60 students. However, the GPA is relatively stronger. I think it's up by about 0.5 or 0.05. The SAT, you know, I hesitated kind of putting this in here because less than half of our students take that now. Everybody knows that many schools, if not most, are moving to SAT optional. So we anticipate that will probably continue to go down in the out years. We still are going to give our PSAT next year. So we're not sure kind of what's going to shake out there. The SAT is going through a shift in their test again. You know, it's really just going to come down to where the kid is applying and whether or not that school is test optional or not. You take a look at our total applications. Last year, I believe it was around 14 per student. This year, it's right around 10. We feel like that's a good sweet spot for most kids. 11 is kind of what we were aiming for. I believe that's around a national average. I think our kids do a good job of selecting schools, which is, if you look at college bound, that 106 at 100% acceptance rate. So what that tells us is that our kids are selecting the colleges that are the best fit for them. They're doing a better job of looking at what they want, how they match up, and which schools really kind of speak to their passions and where they should be going. That's double what it was last year. So we see that as a major success. 734 acceptances out of that 2,000. That's a 36.4 acceptance rate. And we'll get deeper into the weeds on particular types of schools in a moment. And we still have students that are waitlisted that are looking at going to some of the other universities in their pathway. So we're going to go into the weeds here a little bit. And this is just kind of a primer. That's our Chalk the Quad day. I think most of you saw that. This data, and Quack took all these shots with the drone, so I got to give him props. He always comes out and does that for us. Highly selective college or university. So I think in our minds, we think of highly selective. Oh, that's Harvard, that's Yale, that's this. Actually, it's anything below 15% acceptance rate, which many UCs are now below a 15% acceptance rate. Why is that? Because hundreds of thousands of kids apply to the UCs now. So they can't take very many kids. So their acceptance rates go down. That makes them highly selective, and that's a good thing. So this is a little harder to read. I don't know if you guys got a printout, but I will go over that. So the Ivies didn't do so hot, but we didn't have quite as many apply. You're looking at the left side is 21-22, the right is 22-23. So last year we had 256 applications to the Ivies for 260 kids. So we averaged like one application per kid, obviously that not every kid applied. This year it was 92, so less than half of our students applied to an Ivy. Now you might be thinking, well, why is that? They should all be applying. Not necessarily. That might not be their best fit. We are noticing that less and less kids are choosing out-of-state schools. We are seeing more and more kids go to UCs and CSUs. And I think that's because they're finding that those are a better fit. This could be a little bit of residual out of COVID as well, a little bit more comfortable to stay closer to home. We're seeing our kids, I think, make decisions that are based on not just that school that looks like the amazing school, but they're digging into what that school has to offer for them. You see the UCs last year, 821. So that's probably, what is that, around 3 per student? That's like a 3 per student average. Last year, 578. So that's about 3 per student average again. Our acceptances, though, were higher. We had 166 kids in as accepted to the UCs versus the previous year with more applications, 161. Again, you're going, well, why is that? What's different this year? Other than the things we don't know, which are why some colleges and universities make the choices they make given the profile of the kid, we believe it's because of the work we've been doing to help kids identify the school they really, really want, not just want to go to, but definitely can get into. It matches what they want to do with their life. So in the past, we might see kids who apply to just a blanket number of universities based on that university name. You know, if I was in Nebraska, everybody applied to the University of Nebraska. Everybody wanted to go there. Whether you were going to go there or not, you just applied there. But what we're teaching kids is, yeah, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, those are great. Do you want to go to any of those for what those schools can offer you? And that might be a kid who says, well, no, actually, I wanted to go into, I want to go into teaching. Well, you don't need to go to Harvard to go teaching. I mean, that might be a great place to get your master's, but your undergrad, maybe not. So they're, I think, evaluating themselves better and making better selections. And you'll notice that that rate is higher than it was a couple of years ago. CSUs, we see the same thing. More applications, but almost double the amount of acceptances. And our rate is really going through the roof there, 63.8% rate. And then we see in the California privates, and these are the lists there, Claremont McKenna, Harvey Mudd. It's not all of them. I grabbed a few of the bigger ones. We had less, almost less than half of the applications. We had almost as many acceptances, just shy of about 20. And our rate of acceptance was 27% versus 18%, with many students choosing to attend. So the thing I'm most proud of is I think the fact that we're getting our parents better educated about selecting colleges and universities. We're getting our students better educated about who they are. We do a lot of work on them understanding where their strengths lie. And we talked about that a bit last year, which we use a strengths finder in Naviance. And we started that 3 years ago. So this is kind of the first group that's gotten almost all of their training through the counseling work that we've done. And I think we're starting to see it pay dividends. So this is just, this is SMHS versus UC acceptance rate. So you see the red is what the typical California acceptance rate is for that particular university. And what you're seeing in blue is our acceptance rate. So if you look at that, you've got on the left is Berkeley. Generally 11% of students get accepted, but at San Marino High School, 22%. Davis, 37%, San Marino High School, 40%. Irvine, 21%, ours is 12.6%. UCLA, we're about even, 9% and 8.7%. Merced, we got 100% of the kids who wanted to go to Merced got in. At Riverside, 81%, it's exceeding. San Diego, which is becoming a really popular university. They've done a lot of great work down there. Typically 25%, we got 17. Santa Barbara, just under at 23%, and Santa Cruz, we're exceeding by a few percentage points at 54%. So again, we see this as we're seeing kids, they're stopping their application to all of them. And so in the past, we would see, everybody would apply to at least 11 universities, and most of them were the UCs. And whether or not it was the right fit or not. Now what we're seeing is, well, if you're not going to be an engineer, don't try to go to Irvine, because that's kind of their wheelhouse, or medical sciences, that's kind of Irvine. If you're not doing that, don't apply there. Take that time and energy and apply to Davis, because that fits what you want to do more. And kids are really starting to listen to us, and I think that that's what's yielding these results. This is percent of students attending by category. So where are our kids going? UCs, 24% of our kids are going to a UC. About 10% to a private, 15 to a private out of California. Another 25 are going to community college, mostly PCC. And then another 10 are going to an out-of-state public school or a CSU. Obviously, that doesn't cover everybody because there's smatterings here and there. We have one student going to a military college next year. I think we have one going overseas as well. And then finally, and then we can take some questions. Rates by category. So highly selective universities, again, those are those 15% or less. We're at 18% in 2020. We got up to 25% last year, and we're holding steady there. UCs, we were at 19% in 2020. Now we're up to 24 and been holding there. And out of states, as I said, we see a trend of more kids staying home. And we do think that that's a result of sort of just feeling safer and more comfortable here. And also, our kids are starting to realize which UCs and CSUs really match them. And they're starting to understand how fantastic that university system is. And also how affordable it is to be in an in-state school, and how when you look at them in the out years, because you go, okay, so this is where you're going to get your undergrad. From there, where do these colleges and universities connect you to? Where are you going to get your master's? And I think that that's helpful as well. So I can answer a few questions.
Do you have a, oh, go ahead.
No, go.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Do you have any, does the high school share any of this data between other high schools? And do you have comparable districts or high schools too?
We would if they called us. We're not gonna share anything unless we have to. We can contact some of our locals. We feel that we're pretty competitive on the whole. I think that if you get a bigger school, you tend to get, different results because you have a bigger pool. For example, there's a host of kids from Redondo Union and from Arcadia, as I've talked about those principals who are going to Ivies, but they had 700 kids graduate. So you're bound to get a couple in. So I think that it just depends. If we went to similar schools, we just look at La Cañada and South Pass.
Right.
I can get some of that data for you.
Thank you.
It's not my car.
Okay, I can make a couple comment on the couple school because we don't see here.
Yeah.
Because I'm familiar with healthcare. So like we have about two go to UOP, University of Pacific. So these two schools, I think those parents, they are already in the healthcare, the doctor, so they just put a kid in the UOP for the dental or the pharmacist. Yeah. Another one, we have one go to the University of Kansas.
Yeah.
So that's I think it's 5-year or 6-year accelerated medical school. Yeah. I think this student probably can go the other school, but choose to go to University of Kansas.
Yes.
And besides that, I'd like to know you have data for USC or NYU acceptance rate.
I do. I don't have it on me. I know our USC rate this year was really good. Because I remember when we were at our retreat and Carlos and I were putting this together, he's like, oh my gosh, look at USC. I'm like, put it in there. So it's in the private in-state schools data, but it's not broken out. But I can get that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Do you have any ability and data on following up with students who've gone to community college and where they've transferred to?
We can get that. Sonia, actually, so there's a challenge there. We've talked to PCC about this since I was in your position. So they have a responsibility to track those. The problem is the number that you would use to identify a kid, they can't get the state to commit to a single number. So our state student ID that we have is not the same one they get at PCC. And then when they leave, they get a different number. So they're in the same position that we are, which is you're basically just trying to doggedly pursue a kid and figure out what happened to them. We keep all of the kids' data when they exit our school. And this is we're putting a comprehensive survey together, and we're also going to do something that's a little less survey-ish, but more anecdotal next year. We want to invite all of our kids during their spring break to come in and do talks with our seniors and our juniors, and maybe our sophomore and freshmen through our homeroom, our new homeroom next year. So we're already reaching out to the kids who are leaving this year and the last couple of years of kids who we know we have their contact information. So that'll be more anecdotal. And then hopefully we can work with the Alumni Association to do something a little bit more broad. But we've asked PCC that too. And they're like, even if we know, we can't tell you because it's private. So we would have to call every kid individually and just be like, hey, after this, where'd you go? And if they wanted to report it, they can. That's part of the funding issue with the city colleges is they're supposed to show that they get you to a 4-year. If not, get you to a job, but that's all self-reported. This is the best data I think we've ever had because our counseling team pulled every kid in and basically said, all right, here's everything you said you applied for. Did you get into this school? I actually didn't apply. Okay, take that one off. Did you get into this one? Yeah, I got into that one. Okay, you didn't mark that. So we went through every single one. So this is really clean data. But I'll work on that answer too.
And one more question, given so much of the conversation around what we're preparing our students for revolves around the workforce and the pathways, and how much the colleges are really tailoring their admissions of students who have interests aligned to that, kind of speaking to Mr. Chang's point of students going into healthcare, art students going to art schools, STEM students going to STEM schools. To what extent are we looking at the students in terms of the majors they're going to? Do we have a sense of what fields they're going into, what majors they're planning to study?
Yeah, they all have to declare. The very few colleges and universities who want you to come in with no declaration. And they actually, we still have talks with kids about this. Well, I'm going to go in as this, and then I'm just going to switch next year. And we tell them, you're going to get kicked out. They're not okay with that. They know that shell game and they're not willing to play it. So we do know what their major has been declared. Can you change it? Obviously you can, but that doesn't mean you're going to get into that college. So we would have to go and do some, again, surveying afterwards to see if they stuck with that. But we look at our pathways. So for example, there's a kid I always think of, he got an early decision at NYU. And that's unusual. And he got into their film school. So that's really unusual because it's hard to get into NYU film school. He got an early decision. Why? He went through our entire media arts pathway. Like he did everything. And he went beyond that and created his own YouTube channel. So he's doing all of these things. So it completely aligns. What we're doing is having those conversations much earlier. We start in 8th grade. What are you interested in? So let's start doing your strengths finder. And then we go into the freshman year and we look at that and we say, so wait, you show a proclivity for business and you said you like business. Why aren't you taking Miss Rushing's business classes? And then they, oh yeah, well, maybe you should stop doing, the media arts, which you don't seem to have an interest in or proclivity, and go over here. And so we're doing that work earlier on. And I think that's probably something that's bearing out here as well. Really excited to see the medical arts pathway because we're also thinking we can expand that into Mr. Basulto's media arts, because there are a lot of courses up at PCC that we could do some sort of a dual thing with, and he could teach those because he's got the professional experience. And then the same goes for Miss Rushing's business, because 2 of her courses are it's called articulated, so they can get a concurrent enrollment credit, but not a dual enrollment credit. And we think we can maybe build that out as well. And then the idea is maybe to be able to do that in drama, because they have a really good performing arts program there. So we try to connect it that way as well. So there's a lot of opportunities. The Medical Arts Academy have kind of opened up, and because we have a really great relationship with Carlos Castellon, who's their dual enrollment person, I think we can kind of exploit that. But yeah, I do think we're seeing an alignment, and that's why we're seeing an increased number of kids, less college applications and a higher acceptance rate. That tells you that the pre-work you're doing is starting to pay off.
Yeah, that was my question as well, was the majors. And then I would love to see that data with kids who have completed a pathway and where their majors, their declared majors, because I feel like it's like we're doing that good pre-work that's drilling down early, it's more meaningful. It's awesome.
Yeah, we can pull all their majors up and we can see how many of them have done a pathway. Yeah, we can do that.
And one side question you may or may not know the answer to, the college application process is and so ridiculous, and I mean massively depression inducing. So how have you seen some of the work your team has done around this side of, cleaner advising in connection with mental health supports. How have you seen that make an impact in terms of how your students are coping and building those skills that will launch them for college? Because part of it is they get to college and sometimes they bounce back. Right. And we don't necessarily want that either, because it means it wasn't the right fit or they weren't ready. And so how has that sort of looked for you?
So it's great that our next presentation is going to be our wellness counselor in our wellness center. Anecdotally, there was a story about this year's graduating class and next year's graduating class. And there was a story told to me that the juniors were kind of, oh, you're going there kind of thing, right? And we've heard that before. Our kids they're our kids, and they tend to go, oh, you're only going there. And I tell my seniors, look at them and say, you're not going anywhere right now. So I don't know what you're talking about. But our senior class, instead of getting aggravated, upset, or angry about that, they basically just locked arms with each other. It was like, no, we're fine. We're fine. We're going to be just fine. I think what you're going to hear from Tanya in a moment is the next biggest step we have to do is get our parents on that wellness train a little bit more. We can teach our kids till we're blue in the face, but we're only there for them 6 hours out of the day. And they're probably only interacting with the wellness center maybe an hour every few days if they really need intensive care. But your parents are there for the whole 18 years that you've been here, and you're not hearing the same. If you're not hearing the same message, then it's going to be difficult. So we have to get that same message out for our parents so that they can understand. Yeah, if your kid comes home and is like, you know what, I just want a year where I'm just going to go to PCC. I'm freaking out about this. That doesn't mean your kid's not going to go to Harvard or Yale or USC or UC Santa Cruz. It means that they're telling you, I'm not ready right now. Don't send me because I will bounce back. But I will be ready. Anecdotally, again, there's a story of a kid who's wanted to go to Yale from San Marino High School, started at PCC, went to a UC. He's a Yale graduate. All roads lead to where you want to if you work hard at it and if you have the right support. And the right support isn't just get through it. Sometimes it's, okay, let's take a breath. And a lot of times what our kids hear there is, oh, it's okay. Well, actually, then I am ready to go. They just want to know that it's okay for them to feel that fear. And so that's kind of our next step, I think, in our wellness. But I was most proud of the fact that they were just like, yeah, so what? You don't like where I'm going? That's all right. You're not going anywhere. I'm going, and they held each other up. So that was really cool.
Any other? Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
What is our senior graduation rate this year?
100%.
100%?
I wasn't a single kid that we missed this year.
Yeah.
We don't have any of them.
Right.
We don't have any of them
They
in
all-
summer school.
yeah,
So
100%.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
th-
100%.
and then do you have numbers for community college and military or?
We have one kid who chose to go to the Marine Corps. And we had 23% of students say they were going to go to PCC, but there's a smattering of those, and I don't know the number, who are waiting for their wait list. And you know what we're seeing more with the wait list is there's a lot of kids who say they're going and they don't go. So then there's spots that open up and colleges and universities contact kids as late as now and start saying, hey, we have a spot. We want you. Do you want to come? So a lot of kids have just elected to do that as well. I'm a big fan of community college because that's what works for the right kid. And I think it's important for us to be like, that's great. You well enough to do that. The vast majority of our kids who bounce back, and I've talked to several of them over the last few years, they go right to PCC with a plan of, well, this way I can transfer to UCLA. And they're right, because the transfer rate from PCC to UCLA is one of the highest in the state. And that might be where they always wanted to go. So, and they probably said, well, I'll just go over here for 2 years and then transfer. And then they get there and realize, A, I don't like the school. B, it's too far from home. I wasn't really ready. C, oh my gosh, I can't get to UCLA from here because the transfer rate stinks. Let me just go to PCC. I'll pay 1/10 of the cost, get the same courses, go to UCLA and become a Bruin. Sorry, there's so many USC people over here. I don't know. But the transfer rate there is a little smaller. But there's a solid transfer rate to USC as well from PCC. So
All right. Any other questions? Jason, I want to thank you for this presentation and I hope Carlos feels better soon. Next, at this time, I would like to turn it over not only to you, but to our counselor, Tanya El-Hindi.
thank you, Miss El Hindi, for coming in. I noticed no kids in tow, so.
No, my husband was canceled his plans.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it's a day for husbands not feeling well, I guess. Come on up. I'm going to do less talking now about make everybody happy. I just want to say that when I got here 3 years ago, we had a wellness center that was ready, willing and able, but didn't have the right person at the helm. And we didn't post a wellness center counselor, but we read the application of this wonderful person and we're like, okay, we gotta get her and we gotta figure out a way to put her upstairs. That it has to have exceeded everybody's thoughts of what it could be. She has taken that from a Titan Wellness Center to a San Marino Unified School District Wellness Initiative. She's helping parents at every level. Every day at summer school, there are parents coming in. There are little kids from Carver, Valentine, Huntington Middle School. Their parents are coming in. If it weren't for Tanya, and this is the worst feeling to have, but the multiple suicide threat assessments would not have just been assessments. Something would have happened. And she, along with her team, who every day smile when they pass my office and wave, and they're really that little beating heart in the corner that if you didn't have it, you'd notice it right away. And so I'm just eternally grateful that she picked us and we were able to put her in the right spot. As Dr. De La Torre knows, it's not about driving in the right direction, it's having the right people on the bus. So we got a good one here. And now I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. That wonderful introduction. So I'm Tanya El-Hindi. I really enjoy coming and sharing information. I could talk a whole weekend conference about school-based mental health and why we need it and why we need to champion it at every single level within the school district and in our government. So I appreciate the opportunity. I encourage and I welcome questions because I really want it to be a community dialogue. And that is one of our main focuses within the Wellness Center, and our goals with parents is that it's a community dialogue. We're in this together to get them to where they want to go when they leave us, but we also want them to come back. And when they get to wherever they're going, we want them to utilize those wellness services. If they're going clear across the country or if they're going down the street to PCC, we want them to walk into that wellness center as needed. So we can go ahead and click to the next, or, oh, I have it. Okay, so here is our team from this last year. And sadly, these faces are changing and our folks are turning over and rolling out, but I really wanted to acknowledge all of the work that they have done. And so I included them here. They're all MFT trainees. And I have shifted our intern focus to MFT trainees only. And that is because we get more bang for our $0. So basically, we pay nothing to our trainees. However, they're on average on site at one of the schools, and I listed all of the different schools each of the trainees go to. They're here 35 to 40 hours a week, and they haven't earned a single dollar. And some of those folks on there, I would like to highlight Bethany. She stayed an extra semester just because she wanted to. She's going to be going to Sycamores, the mental health agency that does school-based services and a number of other services around us. She hit her 500 direct client hours. 500 hours of direct client means that there was either a child, a parent, or both sitting in front of her for 500 hours. And that is an incredible feat. Meredith, who's also here, she would love to stay and join the Carver team. She's here in the summer. She's about 20 hours away from her 500 hours. And Peijen, who is now an associate, stayed on with us and she's hit her 500 hours and she's almost at about 750. So I mention that because that is the dedication of the workforce that supports the Titan Wellness Center. And without that, I mean, I don't know, I could count how many students I could see in a week, but it would not max the number of, it wouldn't even come close to matching the number of hours that is spent with our students and our parents. So I think it's important to highlight. I don't think I put a slide. So Sarah left, Meredith is leaving, although we would love her to stay. Bethany left, UDS, she started in January, so she will be with us at least through December, if not through the end of the school year. And then Payjen, we are championing to keep her because she has continued with us and has really been lifting the load over at Huntington. And then for this upcoming year, we're going to be welcoming 7 new folks. So we're going to have 7 new MFT trainees. We have expanded our partnerships, and those are all of the university and college partnerships that we have. We have 4 who are coming in from Pepperdine, and we're really excited. That's one of our new partnerships. Laverne is also a new partnership. We have 1 coming from there. And we're really looking at expanding to make sure that we get the right trainees for us. So some of the main things that I look for is how much time do you have available? I only take trainees who are available to be on site a minimum of 4 days per week, because it takes a lot of time and energy for me to invest in them. And then there's a lot of camaraderie and community that is built among us in the wellness center. So we all enjoy being there every day. So as I said, we're bringing in 7 new folks. We have Yulia who's staying. We have Jesse who has 1 more semester with us, and then hopefully we can keep Payjen. So if you can add up those number of folks, that's a lot of charts that I'm reading. That's a lot of referrals that are coming through. And those are a lot of cases that we're monitoring, but that does allow us to go out to all of the different school sites. So we offer that direct support on campus. Of course, I champion school-based mental health. That's oftentimes the first exposure for a student or a family engaging in mental health services. My number 1 goal and my purpose in life is to reduce stigma, and the best place to do it is within a school setting. So we're working on that every day, saying it's okay to say I'm not okay, and it's okay to ask for help. The other thing is this year we did start NAMI on campus, which is the National Association of Mental Illness. So that's really important. That is a certified club through the NAMI organization. So that's not something that you can start. You have to follow their guidelines. You have to do the different things that they require. And we applied for some mini grants. And so we received $500 to do some projects. And I will share that with you at the end. We also have that parent and family support. So I can't stress that enough, how much time and energy we focus on supporting our parents. Because what we know is when there's a strong connection between parent and child, that child will thrive. And we do a lot of focus of just working with parents individually, bringing parents in the room. And you know what? Our kids are very open to that. Whether it's at the elementary level or the high school level, we have cooperation with parents, and we have those joint sessions running all the time. And so I think that that's huge, that we're creating this sense of a parent can say, I need help with my parenting. I need help with my kid just comes home and closes the door, and I don't know how to engage and how to talk with them. So I feel really privileged that we have that opportunity and that parents trust us, and they're willing to say what's not working. And they're willing to say where their mistakes are, and they're taking feedback from us. And they're recognizing the skill of the MFT trainee who might not have any children. But they recognize that they're training and the work that they're doing, and they're taking what we share with them, and it's really benefiting the students and the families. We do that student advocacy piece. This year, I think, was a great year of example. And Jason knows those students that really struggle with some anxiety or some other issues, challenges that were going on with them that needed that 504 support. So there was a lot of advocacy. So one of the things that we do in the Wellness Center, which is part of the MFT training, is that DSM diagnosis. So we had provided the diagnosis that we had come up with based on current symptoms and behaviors, discussing it with parent. That's what our treatment goals are based on, and sharing that information with the school to get that 504 plan. So that's something that has been happening for a real long time. If they went out and they saw a private practice provider, they would bring in that letter from the therapist to initiate that 504 to give that student that additional support. We are able to do that as well, and to do that student advocacy and collaborate to make that process much quicker and much smoother for the student. And then we also then can communicate with the teacher as to why these things are helpful. helpful and necessary. So I think it really kind of closes a gap that I think probably prior we might not have really known was there. But that student advocacy is critical. And then that goes along with that collaboration to really make sure that we're all on the same page to support the needs of the student. And then what we started the last couple of months of school is our parent connection. So we have that at Huntington, and it's one time per month. And I think it's the first, I want to say it's the first Tuesday of every month. And then at the high school, it's the second Wednesday. And so our first parent connection, it was just, we sent out a notice and it's just come. There's no agenda, just come in. We can chat about nothing. We can chat about the school system. You chat with other parents. So our very first one at Huntington, I think we had one parent, which was great. But then since then, it just really kind of snowballed. And so our last one at the high school in May, I want to say we had 8 parents, but not only did we have 8 parents, we had a parent from Carver, we had a parent from Huntington, and then we had some from San Marino. So what's that showing is like, we don't have your kids, but we will. And we're starting to build those relationships now. And so what happened with those students is there was or those parents, some of them had already submitted referrals, and then through that conversation, submitted referrals. So it was really something that obviously parents needed to talk about or reach out and ask for support. And we created that avenue for them to get it. That last one that we had was also really nice because our head counselor, Ms. Flores, joined, which then added the academic piece and parents had questions. And it was nice to have such an informal, no agenda, here's some tea, just chat. So that's something that we really look forward to doing in the upcoming school year, because it's just nice to just welcome them in just because. So here is some information on our referrals. So for my turning out to be older eyes, it's a little difficult to see, but the top line is the first year that I came on board. That's 2021. And then it progresses from there. So then the bottom line for each of those different schools is the referrals that we've received. So for this school year, we had 218 referrals. The year previous, it was 197. And then before that, it was 106. So you can see how the referrals have increased. And then you can see at what school sites they have increased. So you can even see at the high school, the referral rate has actually gone down. And I think that's really important to note because our walk-ins continue to increase. So as we have opportunity to just connect and provide support when needed in a moment, we are addressing the impending crisis that Mr. Kurtenbach was speaking of, because we're having more intervention in that moment before it snowballs into something it doesn't need to be, because we are accessible. So this is what the referral data looks like. So you can see Carver is exploding, hence why it would be really helpful to have an MFT trainee there, who just stays in a station there. And this year we had 29 referrals. So the bulk of our wait list right now is for Carver. So we have had some of those families and students come in through the month of June as we've stayed open for summer school, and we're doing assessments and we're doing different things to get them ready. Then you can see the referrals have increased at Valentine and HMS also. So that increase at HMS is largely because Peijen Chen is there. So what had happened was she was leaving us at the beginning of December because she had spent a year and a half here. And we closed out all of her cases. And then Jason was able to find, Mr. Kurtenbach was able to find some money to keep her and maintain her. And then her caseload went up to 15 within like 2 weeks, just Huntington. And it's because we have that need. And so I'll share a little bit more about the walk-in data. And I know Ms. Gonzalez was here a few weeks back and talked about the Wellness Center at Huntington, but we're really seeing that if we open the door and we're present, then we're identifying the needs. So that's really kind of marks that increase at Huntington. And I think that's important to note. I think that number should actually be significantly higher. So when I think about a target for mental health and are we finding all of the students, I would say the sweet spot is probably 12 to 15% of our student body should be referred. And that's either because we're going to provide some type of support, that's tier 2 or tier 3, or because we need to connect them to another provider or whatever that might look like, but that there should be some conversation and connection around how to support the social emotional needs of their student. And then you can see, as I said, at the high school, it's gone down slightly, but I think it's just because of the access. Whenever they need to access, someone is there for them to talk with. So the parent and student acceptance rate. So I think this is really important. And this is really to highlight that once we can have a conversation with our parents are on board. We have amazing parents here. So as you can see, the purple in the students, so we have parents who say yes, then we have students who say yes, and sometimes the student says yes. Not very often does the parent say no, but sometimes the student says no and the parent says yes. Right? So we have a lot of that takes place also. But as you see, overall, they're saying yes to our service. So what happens is I bring MFT trainees on at different cycles. So that way I don't close everyone out at the same time, or I try not to. So we usually peak, a wait list starts building about November, and then the wait list starts building again about March. That's kind of how it goes. And then what happens is we have people who stay on the wait list for 5 months, 6 months, because we can't move anyone out. So what had happened after my last trainee came on in January, we started building the wait list again at the end of February. And what happened is those referrals that came in February, March, and after that, all said they would wait for a trainee. They didn't want us to find a provider in the community. They didn't want us to send them to any of our agency partners. They said, no, it's fine, we'll just wait. And so then wonderful, because they trust the service, but then how are we going to meet their needs? Right? And then we have to do that triage work of assessing, well, who's higher need to move up that wait list? And what does that look like? So as we were going into summer, and Mr. Kurtenbach's like, what's the summer schedule? And I'm like, oh, I am a 10-month employee. Oh, let's see what we can do with that. All of those waitlisted referrals, we ended up with about 16. We had consent for every single one of them. Like parents said yes, signed consent. We have it. And now what are we going to do with it? And so it's really important that then we address that need and how we prioritize. So right now in the summer, we have our regular clients, but then we're doing those assessments to get those new clients ready for when the new trainees come on board in July and in August. And then the cycle keeps moving. So we want to make sure that yes keeps going up, but we also have to keep up with that yes going up. And some of the things you might notice from the board, or you don't really see a flyer from the wellness center saying, hey, come make a referral. We don't advertise because we can't keep up with it. So it's just really important to know that the community wants it and we're trying to meet those needs. And we want to keep that conversation going, because when we have that kid at Carver who then goes to Huntington, well, then they're coming to San Marino High School. And we want to keep that going, that this is their community for them to stay in for the long haul.
May I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
So what would be the average amount of sessions till a case is resolved? Because I mean, as you move them through, you're not just keeping them forever,
No.
right? Yeah. Okay.
So that's a great question. It depends on what's going on with them. So we have some referrals and clients when they start, we might meet with the kid once or twice and then we're like, this is a family issue. So then what happens is all sessions shift to having the parent in the room, like parent, you need to come. So it depends. And then there are some kids, depending on what's going on with them and their current symptoms and behaviors and their ability to kind of like articulate how it relates to their physical being, it could be short. So we have actually had some clients, especially our high schoolers, that have anxiety, and it's like very specific, and it's like 12 weeks. They're in the route. Like they learn the tools, they could manage. And that's really that's an easier one. So like I have some kids that maybe have some emotional regulation, depending on age and stage. It's like, I don't try and lock them in longer than 12 weeks, but that's something too that we talk about with parents in the beginning of like, what is how long it's going to take. If we were a private practice entity or the parent was self-pay, we are obligated by law to give them a good faith estimate as to how much this will cost to resolve the issue and how long that will be. So we do have those conversations, and sometimes kids want to know what happens in this delicate developmental phase is it seems like we're going to close and then something happens. And then we might then put them in kind of like a maintenance for a couple of weeks and then we end up closing it. So we also look at, is there a medical necessity and is there something for us to do? So we had some students of the elementary level, some behavioral challenges, and we would see it in the classroom, but there's really nothing we can do for it because it's a parenting issue, or it could be a teaching issue and it's not necessarily a good match. So the kid is not of the wherewithal, 6-year-old, to then say, oh, well, these are all the things I messed up this week. So when you pull them out to meet, sometimes it's really difficult. It's really the support needs to be in the classroom when they're de-escalated, and the teacher's skills to calm them down is really elevating the situation, and then how parent goes about it at home. So there's all these kind of things that go into it. And although it might appear that there's something going on with the student, there's nothing we can do. And there's nothing an outside provider can do really either. It's whether or not parent wants to make some hard corrections, or there's something going on in the family system that they just can't do anything about it at that moment. And then obviously the teacher can't be changed.
Yes. About the closed case, who makes a determination of a case being closed? Or can a student self-assess and say, I'm done, I don't want to come anymore?
Yes.
Considered closed, or it'll be assessed again by the MFT? And
well, so the way like therapy works, it's 100% are you in it and are you working? So one of the things we say, it's not about the time that you spend in the chair, it's what are you doing outside of that? Really, that's what it comes down to. So at any moment in time, the parent can decide, I don't want to participate anymore. The student can decide they don't want to participate anymore. But when it's time to close it because they've met goals, that's really my determination because I'm the clinical supervisor. So I'm the one that determines like, okay, so where are we at as far as goals go? So then when we get really backlogged as to like, who are we going to help? Or there's people who are a higher elevated need, then we would start closing the cases that don't have such an elevated need.
thank you.
So those are all of the those kind of like management things that I'm trying to like manage to kind of keep the flow going. And then there's some students who don't necessarily have a medical necessity anymore. Like they've met their goals, but the benefit of that one-on-one time adult, we just can't take it away. Because depending on what's happening in the family system, depending on how many other siblings are in the home, there's so many other factors that then you just really see the benefit of an adult with no electronics, no distractions, no siblings, talking with them and playing a game with them and seeing them. So all of that we also take into account too. So that's why we'll see too, we have a lot of kids that might roll over from year over year because they just need that one-on-one attention. The other thing to note here too, in the student acceptance rate, that also includes those kids who have engaged in minor consent. So our referral source is important to note like where those referrals are coming from. So when it says the Titan Wellness Center, those are referrals that we've made our staff directly. And that could be because they're rolling over from one year to the next. So what I do is I close out our data for 1 year and then everyone gets input who's continuing for the next year because they're actually receiving the service in the following school year. Then that's how many 33% came from admin, counselors, or staff. A student or a friend referral, that's the student self-referring, and then the parent referral themselves. That Titan Wellness Center referral too, I break that down further because that number, oh, I didn't put it in here, I just wrote it out. That's really important because sometimes we make the referral, but it's because the student walked into the wellness center and they need a service, or it's because we received a direct email from a parent, but the parent didn't make the referral. So when I say 13%, that's the parent who saw it on the website, filled out the referral themselves and hit send. If they emailed me directly, I make the referral and it counts as Titan Wellness Center made the referral because technically we did. And then I tag it that it was because we got a direct email. Same for if the counselor made a direct email, school psychologist made a direct email. We count that because we actually input the referral, but then we indicate the source of where it came from, because I think that's really important. Our target, in my opinion, is to increase parent direct referral for sure. We want more parents to seek out services when something is going on directly. And then we also want students obviously to refer themselves more. We want to see that number increase, as well as I would like to see teachers make more referrals, because teachers are like that front line, especially at the elementary school, and they have that direct contact during parent-teacher conference. They learn things, and we don't know how much parent is comfortable with everyone else in the school office knowing what's going on with their child. So something might be disclosed to the teacher during that intimate parent-teacher conference, but they might not necessarily want the teacher to go back to the team and then share what's going on. So we would really like parents then to feel comfortable to directly make the referral for themselves, so we can see what is appropriate and how to support that family. So yeah, so my number on that is, of that 35% of the referrals that we made, 63% were from walk-ins or direct emails for requests. Then here's the reason for referrals. So the reason for referral is not necessarily the reason for service, and I cannot stress that enough. The reason for referral is oftentimes the symptom that was on the surface that highlighted the situation, but the reason for the service itself is usually something underneath that's more ingrained, it's more longstanding. It's not that outward symptom. So like, for example, anxiety. So let's say we have some outward symptoms of anxiety, things we see as skin picking, hair pulling, eyelash pulling, and then just other like visible anxiety that you can just see. That is from other things. So the outward part is what makes the reason for referral. But then as we do the assessment, we find out, oh, okay, this is really what's going on inside here, which is manifesting as that. So we see stress management, difficulty with mood, self-image, anxiety, and with family and relationships. Those are number one. So important to note is not attendance, is not alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, and it's not academics. It's really not. And so the other thing just to note, and I don't have a slide for it, but of our referrals, 109 kids. So 109 kids, 109 of these referrals, they're obviously not elementary because I don't know their GPAs, right? So they're not elementary. It would just be, and if their referral was made when they came in as a freshman, they might not have a GPA either. But of the ones we have, 109 of them had a GPA above 3.0, and they're connected to the Wellness Center. So for the most part, what we see is it's not academics. It is stressful, it is, but it's all of the other things kind of around it. And then also of our total referrals, as I shared, it was 218, 12.8% of those students had IEPs. So I think that's really important to note. 28 of our 218 had IEPs. And then we do capture just other support services, which also includes IEPs. Other support services are they've had an SST, they've had a 504, they're in language class supports. Any of those categories, 31% of our referrals check those boxes. So I think that's important to note. So 68 of our 218 referrals have something. And then, as I said, it's 12.8% have an IEP.
Do you know what the overall IEP percentage is?
Yeah, it's 28%, or no, it's 12.8%, 28 kids.
No, I mean for the school district, so that if it's like, it's proportionate to the population, I just didn't know.
That I don't.
232 students.
How many?
232 students are on an IEP and 78 students are on a 504 plan.
Oh. So if there's 238 with an IEP, we have 28 of them.
10%.
Yeah. And then the 504s, and some of those students too, and I could do something because I don't go back and change the initial referral information. So at time of referral, we capture GPA, we capture grades, AP, honors, and whether or not they've had any of these additional support services. I don't go back and then update it or change it if they then get the 504 plan. And maybe that's something that I could do. Uh-huh.
You mentioned this. Did you say some of the wait time of people on the wait list is like up to 5 months?
Yes.
And the second question is possible that when the school year ends, they don't get it?
Yes.
What happens?
So that's where we try to reach out to them in June. So that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And when they say that they want to wait on that wait list, we revisit them the minute we are restaffed that first week.
Tanya, I'm sorry to interrupt. Kylie,
Oh,
we
sorry.
don't have the questions. Sorry. I just want to let you know. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mind
It's so engrossing, but we'll move on.
If the board has no other questions, do you want to continue on? or
Yeah.
is this?
So
okay.
I think this is just really important to look at. So this is just that walk-in traffic. So if you look at SMH and you look at Huntington, SMH is on the left. This is a lot of information and you might have found it in your packet. The important thing to note is that of the walk-ins, basically 21% of the students at the high school have walked into the wellness center. That's 1 in 5 students have come to the wellness center for something. And what this shows us too is some of them come multiple times. So one of the things that I love seeing is we're just constantly seeing new faces because they have the opportunity to come in and they're coming by for whatever reason. And I think part of it is because the counselors are going into the classrooms, they're doing the SEL curriculums, they're taking advantage of that homeroom time. We're talking about other stuff and we're saying, hey, go by and check it out, because 1 in 5 is huge. We have students who come in, you know, they have lunch, they hang out, they come at the break, or they come in because they need something or they're in crisis and they talk with someone. But I think it's really important to note that 21% of the student body has been through there. And then of course you see the ones that are there all the time, very frequent. And then the other thing too at HMS. So one of the things that we're very blessed that we were able to hire Miss VD Gang this last school year. That was something also that Mr. Kurtenbach was able to do, who's been at Huntington to open the wellness center on those different days. And then what we're seeing also is 25% of the middle school students have gone through the wellness center. They've come in for lunch. They've come in because they have an appointment. They've come in for something. And so that's what we want to see, is that they're starting to come through, and that's how we can identify some different things that are going on with them.
And that's sort of the national level. 26%. People are starting to see
Challenge. So that's really cool. So we're growing our services. So these are the different kind of, I wanted to highlight Huntington in particular, because with Ms. Chen, we were able to, and Ms. Gang, we were able to add those more of those lunchtime Zen zones. That's really important. If we look at the structure of how the middle school works, kids are not kind of free to come out of class like they are at the high school. So how do we capture those kids then? It's different, because at a high school, the kid can come in when they are having a total meltdown on the inside that no one else can see in the middle of class if necessary. But at Huntington, it's not quite the same. And so I would like for us to get to that point at some point, but right now, even having the ability to make sure that it's open during lunch so students can come through is huge. We did some mindfulness groups in 7th and 8th grade at Huntington Middle School. We used the Learning to Breathe curriculum. I brought that curriculum because I used it before, and it was for a research project with UCLA and Fuller. And we, in my previous, we worked on publication to make mindfulness practices evidence-based in schools. So we want to continue to be able to run those mindfulness groups. And then we've also increased those individual services at Huntington, and then having that parent connection. So those are some of the things we'd like to see grow and to continue in the upcoming school year. Of course, we need, you know, support and stuff to do that, but that's something that we want to look at. Chinatown Service Center is our longstanding partner, and then we're looking at moving into doing some parenting workshops and adding a new layer. So I think in San Marino, parents are hungry for connection. They want to learn skills and they want to come to the school for it. So we're really looking forward to providing new opportunities to engage those parents. The last is that partner Hazel Health. We just recently signed the MOU, maybe a board meeting ago, that virtual therapy services, and that could be during or after school. And they do some follow-up referral and linkage. I actually just met with Hazel Health today on the implementation plan and what that would look like. So as I shared before, we don't advertise our services, but I think with our new Hazel Health as a partner, we can start advertising that short-term support. So I'm really looking at how we can incorporate flyering and sharing information that you can engage in those 6 to 7 sessions, 7 to 8 sessions for non-emergency clinical stuff. You broke up with your boyfriend. You're struggling. You're overwhelmed with different things that are happening, but it doesn't require ongoing mental health support, but it does require an adult, and it requires that time and attention. So I really think that Hazel Health is going to be a good fit for that. And so I'm thinking about how we can really kind of robustly try and connect that with our community. So that is a good option for us moving forward. So it's thinking creatively, how can we tap into the needs that we're definitely seeing that our community would like to utilize, and then also address. So it's perfect that the college presentation was tonight as well. I think the most important thing to add, and I had mentioned it earlier, is we want these kids when they go to university to ask for help. We want them to walk into that wellness center and they pay that health fee. It's at every single campus in the United States. And we want them to go in and say when they are struggling. And if they have a good experience here and it turns out okay, and it feels supportive, then they will do that. So we need to get that 1 in 5 up to 1 out of 2 at least. Because we need to make sure that they're just going to ask for help, because sadly, they're not going to pick up the phone and they're not going to call the parent. They're probably not. We'd love them to, but we would also like to help build those connections within the family system so they will make that phone call. But if nothing else, we want them to walk into the wellness center. So here's just some of our flyers, but we don't really advertise. We make them and then they sit on the, in the front office. And then we did send out for our parent connection. That's something that all of my trainees were really passionate about, having that time with parents. The suicide prevention walk is just near and dear to my heart. So I always try and get a team and put together a flyer for that. We want to reach out to staff. That was one of the things that I have not mentioned, is how many staff I had been able to connect with, just because of some different challenges and things that have been going on. And I feel like the Wellness Center is helpful for everyone. And then lastly, I had mentioned our NAMI on campus. So one of the things that we were able to do with the funds that they had provided us is we had did a poster contest, and we really wanted students to say like what mental health was like for them, or what was a good depiction of that, so we could advertise that. So these were the submissions that we got, and I know it's small, just amazing. And what we're looking at doing is printing those up and distributing them on campuses of where it's appropriate. So as you can see, there's some that are a little darker than others. So there's some that might just remain in the wellness center, but then some are appropriate. Like that mindset in the middle is great to have at an elementary school. So we want to look at how we can just send that messaging, and all of the information that's included on the bottom of that kind of large flyer would be included on the individual flyers. So that way they could make a referral, they could reach out for help, whatever it might be, but to really kind of work on trying to create that more visual presence at our campuses. And that's it.
Right. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Tanya. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
All right, next, 2023-24 proposed local control accountability plan. I'd like to invite Dr. Lana Richter, who will present the proposal.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Delatorre, and executive team. Tonight, I will be presenting to you. Oh, thank you. I have the control. I will be presenting to you an overview of the proposed 2022-23 LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan, which is information item 12C on tonight's agenda. The LCAP is a community-based, comprehensive, data-driven plan used to identify annual goals and specific actions aligned with state and local priorities to facilitate continuous improvement. Oops, let's go back one. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is, as mentioned earlier, just to provide you with a brief overview of the proposed LCAP plan. You do have a copy of it in the board packet. Highlight related outcome data as it relates to the 22-23 school year, and review the LCAP adoption timeline. Do I need to point at this? There we go. Okay. Oh, it's a little smaller on this slide, but I think it's important that we start by highlighting this slide, which represents the reciprocal relationship between the board priorities and the LCAP goals, both representing, supporting, and promoting the district priorities. The LCAP is a 3-year plan. Board priorities at the start of this 3-year plan are reflected here on the slide in the blue boxes, and you can see the 4 across: addressing learning regression and variability, address social, emotional, and well-being for students and staff, provide PD to certificated, classified administrators and all staff, and long-term fiscal health and sustainability. And those board priorities at the start of this 3-year LCAP cycle align beautifully with the LCAP goals that were established by the community, which are exemplary teaching and learning, flourishing learning environments, and meaningful and authentic relationships. Now, last year, in year 2 of the 3-year LCAP cycle, the board did establish new goals, as they do every year, and those are listed at the top in blue font. This year, or excuse me, the following year, which will be the 23-24 school year, as we begin the development of our final year for the LCAP, the current LCAP goal, the current board goals that will be created for the 23-24 school year will also be reflected on here. And as every year, they will align beautifully with the LCAP goals so that there's continuous alignment and support and promotion of the district goals. I'll let you do it. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, slide 4.
Next one.
No, this one. So I would be remiss if I did not take the time to recognize and thank our 2022-23 LCAP Educational Partner Committee members for their time this year, for their participation, their input, and their partnership. We're also very appreciative and grateful for our 4 high school students, particularly Katie and Elaine, who attended nearly every meeting, even when assignments, tests, and finals were calling for them at home. Thank you also to the members whose names are reflected here in bold font for serving on our LCAP committee for the past 2 years. So I think it's really important that we recognize them. We did a lot of work together over the course of the year, and I'm very proud to have partnered with them. Next slide. Thank you. So it wasn't just me. Advisory meetings this year were conducted in person and included 5 LCAP educational partner meetings and 4 district English learner advisory committee meetings. The chart at the bottom right highlights our 22-23 LCAP adoption timeline, the committee meeting dates, and the focus for each of those 5 meetings. As required, a draft of the 22-23 LCAP was also shared with the District English Language Advisory Committee and the San Gabriel Valley SELPA to gather input and feedback with regards to the goals and the actions that we have identified for our English learners and our students with exceptional needs. Today's meeting serves as our LCAP public hearing, and on June 27th, the proposed LCAP will be brought back to the board with a recommendation for approval. On or before July 1st, SMUSD's approved 23-24 LCAP will be submitted to LACO in conjunction with the district's budget, which Dr. Lin will be presenting on shortly. Next slide, please. So as mentioned previously, the LCAP really is a 3-year plan developed by the district and intended to align resources to goals and actions that lead to continuous improvement. Beginning with this current 3-year LCAP cycle, starting in 21-22, goals and actions were developed to support year 3 desired outcomes. So starting in 21-22, we had to project 3 years out to see where we wanted to be in 3 years with regards to our outcome data. Because it's a 3-year and next year will serve as year three of the third year for this LCAP cycle, the committee recommended not to make no significant changes to the LCAP metrics or goals or actions so that we are better able to engage in data analysis and observe progress towards set goals throughout the 3-year plan or 3-year cycle. Minor updates and additions, however, were recommended to include new district programs and new district initiatives. Next slide. For the 23-24 school year, our LCAP goals continue to include exemplary teaching and learning, which is really increasing academic achievement for all students through personalized learning opportunities to best ensure that our students are college, career, and life ready. Goal number 2, flourishing learning environments. This really speaks to supporting the social, emotional, and physical needs of all students through conditions that support learning, including professional learning opportunities and tools with regards to instructional technology. And lastly, goal 3, meaningful and authentic learning relationships, increasing student engagement and a sense of community to promote both academic and social emotional well-being, but also to increase parent involvement and engagement. So these are our 3 overarching goals that will remain for our LCAP's third and final year of this LCAP cycle. Next slide, please. Thank you. So for the next few slides, I will briefly review the 23-24 LCAP goals, metrics, and related outcome data. Data included in these next few slides reflect the most recently available data. So for goal number 1, we focused on exemplary teaching and learning. Metrics included are listed on this page on the left-hand side, and they include, I'll read a few, CASP and LPAC student outcome data, reclassification rates for our English language learners, graduation rates, CTE and A through G completion rates, iReady, and much more. On the right side, in no particular order, are the related actions identified to promote progress towards one or more of the identified metrics for goal 1. Some of them include extended learning opportunities to address learning gaps and increase student achievement, before school, after school, summer school, retaining counselors at the elementary and secondary level to provide academic, social, emotional, and career and college counseling. Teachers on special assignment to coordinate and implement services and programs aimed at increasing English language acquisition and academic achievement, expansion of dual enrollment and AP courses, articulated courses, diagnostic assessments, and professional development opportunities. Now for goal 1 here, we have added 2 new actions this year as part of our new district initiatives, and they include the Medical Arts Academy, which will launch this fall at the high school, and the Dual Language Immersion Program, which will launch this fall at Carver Elementary. And those are also reflected here on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. Now, with regards to student outcome data or just outcome data for goal 1, again, this reflects the most available data. Overall, the district demonstrated growth across most metrics for goal number 1. Based on available 2022 CASP data, 87% of our students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 district-wide met or exceeded grade level standards in English language arts and 83% in math. For English language arts, this is a 4% increase when compared to 2021. Although students with disabilities and English learner student groups demonstrated growth in most areas, lower performance levels were observed in ELA and math when compared to all students, particularly in math for our English learners, where an increased focus and attention have been placed and will continue to be placed for the 23-24 school year. Various data points obtained at the local level include AP pass rates, graduation rates, which continue to demonstrate improved performance overall, showing 92% of students earning a 3 or higher on AP exams. That's amazing. That's great. And a graduation rate for the 4-year cohort of 96%. The recently added metric, the iReady diagnostic for grades K through 5, for 2023, 92% of students met or exceeded standards in reading, and 90% met or exceeded standards in math. That's an increase of 3% and 7% respectively from spring of last year to spring of 2023. Data in the lighter font, as we can see, reflect areas where growth is desired, where focus will be placed, such as our English learner progress and college readiness for grade 11 in math, as measured by the spring assessment or the California, or the CASP, which is a California Assessment of Student Progress and Performance. So we're really proud of related outcomes for goal number 1. Next slide, please. Thank you. Goal 2 focused on flourishing learning environments. Metrics identified to measure progress towards this goal included many of the Williams compliance, which are fully credentialed and appropriately assigned teachers, access to standards aligned instructional materials for all students K-12, access to technology, culture surveys, which are our California Healthy Kids surveys, and professional development opportunities. Related actions, again, in no particular order, are listed on the right side, and they include recruiting, hiring, and retaining certificated teachers, providing beginning teacher support to develop and promote teacher expertise, the safety and the conditions of our facilities, which is measured by our facility inspection tool, district nurse and health aide, and professional development opportunities that are really focused on many of the initiatives that we have launched over the last couple of years. Next slide. So this slide shows us the outcome data for goal 2, and everything on this slide reflects 22-23 data. So SMUSD has continued to maintain 100% fully credentialed and appropriately assigned teachers across all grades TK through 12. Schools continue to remain in exemplary condition when measured by the facility inspection tool. And our students continue to access standards aligned instructional materials across all grade levels as required by Ed Code. And this one, thank you to our technology department, replacement of all old access points were replaced and updated with Wi-Fi 6 access points. And that's wonderful. I know this was a goal that we had been working on for the last 2 years. So this goal definitely has been completed. Continuation of effective research-based professional development opportunities to maximize teacher expertise through, but not limited to positive behavior interventions and support, universal design for learning, ELD, social emotional learning, and lastly, restorative practices. So we have a lot that's going on with regards to professional development. And then of course, we have our annual administration of culture surveys for parents, staff, and students with regards to creating environments conducive to learning. Now, some of these demonstrated varying results, although favorable, a desired increase across all areas is our goal. And as you can see with the lighter shaded font, one area that we did decline a little bit was a safe place for students as reflected by our staff culture survey. And so with that, that's going to be an area where continued focus is placed.
May I ask a question now?
Absolutely.
Can you elaborate on what the facility inspection tool is and how we would get an exemplary at all sites?
So I'm going to ask Dr. Lynn to chime in, but from my understanding and speaking with our maintenance and operations department, it is a tool that is used annually to assess the conditions of our facilities to make sure they are in good repair and that they are safe. And there's a checklist that they go through, and based on the assessment of the facilities, they can have needs improvement, They can have good or they can have exemplary, exemplary being the highest. And that would indicate that our facilities are in good repair and they are safe for our students and our faculty.
That is correct.
Thank you.
But that would be different than our facilities needs
Yes,
for our facilities advisory. committee.
yes.
Right.
It's not dangerous to be in that classroom. is what
There are
you're saying.
components of the fit assessment, facilities inspection tool.
Yeah.
Such that they want to look into the cabinets in the classrooms to see if there are no toxic liquids, bleach, or any cleaning solutions that a student might drink accidentally. So that's one tool not related to the physical structure of a campus. The other is how closely, let's say, a bulletin student work example is posted next to an electric panel that might cause fire. So those are some examples in the fit.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, great question. Okay, if we could go to the next slide, please. We are on goal 3, which is meaningful and authentic connections. And the metrics here are on the left side. We looked at chronic absenteeism rates and attendance rates, student dropout rates, expulsions, suspensions, and engagement with regards to district English learner advisory committees, culture surveys, once again, which are our Cal school surveys, and our wellness center referrals, which Miss Tanya El-Hindi just shared with us. Now, before we talk about the actions, I want to share that each of the meetings this year were very productive and very informative. Most of the meetings, we had a guest speaker come in and present. And so we had speakers come in to look at CAS scores, to look at LPAC scores, to look at facility, to look at budget, to look at social emotional well-being, to look at the medical arts pathway, to look at our DLI program, our dual language immersion program, so that our members of the committee could really dissect the data, analyze the data when looking at updating our goals and actions or creating new goals and actions. So a lot of data was analyzed, a lot of productive conversations and dialogue was held throughout each of those meetings. Now, on the right side here, we see the actions that were put into place and developed by the committee to promote a growth towards the set metrics, which are on the left side. And they include expansion of extracurricular activities, ESY for students with special needs, summer school, interventions before school, during school, and even after school. Professional development continuing with PBIS, also including web where everyone belongs at the middle school and link crew at the high school. And then interpretation and translation services to increase parent and student involvement for access to information. Next slide. And here we have the outcome data with regards to goal 3. And again, this data reflects to 2022-23 data. Although attendance, I read that backwards, my apologies. Attendance, although still high, did decrease by 1%. We did see that. With regards to chronic absenteeism, we did see a slight yet unwelcomed increase. We want that number to go in the opposite direction. That is a percentage that we would like to see decrease, not increase. High school and middle school dropout rates district-wide, as well as expulsion rates. Happy to report that they remained at 0. Suspension rates remained low, only increasing by 0.17%. And as desired, an overall increase of 19 referrals to the Wellness Center was demonstrated. And Ms. El-Hindi talked about that, 218 referrals. That is 19 more than last year at this time. The 2023 Cal School Survey results continue to show that parents and staff maintained a strong sense of parent participation, involvement, and partnership. Although a slight increase is observed for sense of meaningful participation, this remains an area of needed focus for us. Student survey data was also disaggregated by grade level. So our committee, our LCAP committee, really looked at this data not only holistically, but we broke it down by grade levels. We looked at grade 5, 7, 9, and 11 to really see where our greatest strengths were and where our gaps were. So overall, The data and the progress that we're making towards goal 3 desired outcomes looks great for us. San Marino, we, as a district, we are continuing to maintain an unwavering focus on continued improvement to make sure that all of our students, the ones who need help, more support and remediation, the ones who need acceleration and enrichment, and those students who are somewhere right in the middle of that, that all of them are successful academically, social, emotionally, as well as behaviorally. And that's a testament to our teachers, our staff, our classified certificated staff, our parents, our community members, our superintendent, our Board of Education, and everyone else who has unconditionally supported our students and our staff. Next slide. Oh, last slide. So this concludes my presentation for tonight's public hearing on the proposed LCAP for 2023-24. And I am more than happy to answer any questions you may have at this time with regards to the presentation.
All right. Are there any questions at this time? This is an informational item only. There's no action required. Okay.
Don't want to go first if anyone else wants to go.
Sure.
Thank you for this. I always love your LCAP reports.
Thank you.
So I had a couple questions. So the math achievement the math and ELA achievement for the students with disabilities, the English language learners, and those students that they're the ones that sort of need these targeted interventions. Are you seeing that in a particular grade level, or is it at the lower grades? Is it at the higher? I know we only do snapshots at 8th and 11th, but what are you sort of seeing?
When we dissected the data in our LCAP committee, we saw that that is a need that we need to look at overall for all grade levels. And they are making progress. We just want them to make progress that's aligned to all students, right? We want them to grow at the same rate. And we know that's going to be a little difficult because they are starting at a lower point. But really looking at what actions we can put into place, what interventions we can put into place, what extra supplemental instructional opportunities we can put into place to support students who are English language learners, as well as students with disabilities. So over the course of this year, and that's going to continue next year, we're really focusing on MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, to really support not only all students, but to target those students who are English language learners, because their interventions will look much different because they're acquiring a second language at the same time that they're trying to master grade level standards. Right. And so for our students with disabilities, they may have different challenges with accessing information. And so those interventions with regards to MTSS will look very different. The director of SPED and I have been working closely. We're hoping to launch that committee in the fall of this year to really define a structure and a model that's consistent district-wide on how to support students. With regards to English learners, we have done a lot over this past year. We are also piloting curriculum, ELD curriculum, at the middle school to support our English learners. And we have provided interventions before school, after school, and during school to help our students acquire language at a faster rate. And that will continue into the upcoming school year as well.
And then on one slide there, the A to G eligibility, it's a little lower. It surprised me. It's 78.4%.
Back to that side. I believe it was slide goal 1.
Where is it?
A through G completion rates.
SEG 79%. Is that what you're looking at?
Sorry, I'm going off of the actual LCAP. I wasn't looking at this.
What page are you on?
Yes, so the UCCSU 79%. So that's the A to G completion rate.
Yes, the UCCSU is the A through G completion rate.
So just doing a cursory look at other high performing schools in California, they're in like the 80s, they're 90s at like the crazy high performing magnet, schools where they test students in. So I'm obviously not expecting us to be performing at those levels, but is there a reason that it's at 79%? I would be surprised given what we saw of our college presentation that I would think it would be a little bit higher.
I would have to dissect that a little bit deeper or a little bit more. That data is from the CDE. And so we want to make sure we're consistent from one year to the next when measuring the growth. I know that we are above the state average for A through G completion rates. With regards to other similar school districts, I would have to bring that data back.
All right.
Yes,
So,
it is. Yes.
did you
Thank
want
you
me-
for the reminder. This
You're
is
good?
2022 data.
So this is
21,
old, yeah,
22.
this is old data.
It's the most current data we have so far. Yes.
But it's still-
Most recent data. Yes.
Yes. Well, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for your work and your LCAP work for the many years. I am so pleased with your work and what you're able to accomplish. I know it's very difficult to look at all of the data. I know Dr. Lynn loves looking at data too, but you know, I'm kind of cross-eyed looking at all this. But thank you for your work and what I'm seeing beyond the data points is just the continued look at how we grow and how we move forward. Because you can look at data at multiple intersections, but what's sometimes not showing is the actual work in setting the foundation, like the MTSS and all of the work that you put in, the iReady, you know, which looks at the benchmarks or looking at the assessment and how we formatively and summatively look at the results and what that gives us, because it allows us to address the needs as we are moving along. Anyways, with that, let's continue. I believe the next, I am turning it over to Dr. Michael Lynn for 2023-24 district budget.
Thank you, Board President Ryan, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. De La Torre, and executive team. Item 12D is an informational presentation on the 23-24 proposed budget for our school district. It works. Here's a quick recap of how school districts in the state of California are funded. On the left-hand side, we see that the three major sources of state tax revenues. These include personal income tax, sales and use tax, corporation tax, and etc. The two biggest expenditures, as you can see on the right-hand side, which are K-12 education, as well as health and human services. Now, when we say K-12 education, we really mean TK to 12 education, because TK is a 2-year kindergarten program, and it is reported and funded as if it is kindergarten. Also, unlike restricted funds, for general funds, there is typically little to no one-to-one matching of revenues to expenditures. You can see that the revenues don't necessarily all flow into one expenditure. It is the lump sum revenues and then how the state decides to divvy it up. You're going to see the same pattern works in all types of budgets, including our budget. Okay, on this slide, we have staff has used these funding factors. These are the numbers you're going to see that are the funding factors to develop the 23-24 district budget. Base grants are provided by grade span ADA, or average daily attendance. We applied a statutory cost of living adjustment of 8.22%. We then applied the grade span adjustment for TK through 3rd and grades 9 through 12. Again, TK is included in K3 calculations for funding purposes and budgeting. We also get an additional TK add-on. This is the second year that's happening in the state of California in the amount of $3,044 per ADA, not per enrollment, but per ADA. That means if a student exists on our roster, we don't automatically get funded. We have to accrue attendance in order to get that funding. For supplemental grant funding, districts receive an additional 20% per ADA for their unduplicated pupil percentages. That's the UPP acronym, unduplicated pupil percentages. And our unduplicated pupil percentage is projected to be 16.8%. And let's see, 16.8%. 3%. We need 55% UPP, unduplicated pupil percentage, to qualify for receiving concentration grant funding. And what that means is, unlike many other school districts in the state where there are more low-income households, English learners, and or foster youth members, our district does not qualify for any concentration funding. This does have a significant impact on how we're funded because concentration funding offers an additional 65% of the base funding. So imagine base funding and you get 65% more on top of that. We get 0 concentration grant dollars. And this is why it's so important that our local organizations that support our district, they really make a difference in how we're funded. Okay, financial projections dartboard. On this slide, we make use of the dartboard data from the School Services of California to develop the district budget. For parcel tax projections, we take the lesser of the CPI or 3% to calculate our parcel tax revenues. For our public watching at home, CPI stands for the Consumer Price Index, CPI, Consumer Price Index, and it is one of the measures of inflation. And when the CPI is higher than 3%, the district effectively receives less purchasing power for positions and educational programs from that year's parcel tax revenues because we cap parcel tax increases at 3%. And when the CPI is lower than 3%, parcel taxes increase according to the CPI number that is below 3%. So over the long term, the effective purchasing power of the two local parcel taxes gradually erode away. The other major factors are the district's contributions to employee pensions, STIRS and PERS, and STIRS has leveled off at 19.1%. PERS continues to increase at 26.68% for 23-24 and above 28% past 2025. So for our classified employees, PERS will increase beyond 28% after 2025. Some of the 8.22% cost of living adjustment is absorbed by these factors, which we have used in developing the projected district budget. Okay. So you can see on this slide, I tried to maximize all the free space so we can see these numbers more clearly. It is a lot of information. And this is our revenues model. It is developed based on the factors mentioned previously. For key revenue assumptions, the district is projecting $48.7 million in revenues with $31.5 million in the form of state LCFF funding. So the state gives us through LCFF, and one of the qualifications for LCFF is we have to have an LCAP plan, what Dr. Richter presented earlier. We are funded, the LCFF is based on average daily attendance, grade span adjustments we mentioned earlier, as well as the 16.8% we get through our unduplicated count supplemental grant. We're looking at a little over $1 million in supplemental funding based on the unduplicated count of 16.8%. And we anticipate receiving about $300,000 in Title I, and this is restricted federal funding for students who are at risk, and this is used to close the achievement gap. The one-time arts, music, instructional block grant is projected to be just under $550,000. Measure E is projected to be just over $4.3 million, and Measure R is just under $1.7 million. Our revenues model also factored in a $2 million commitment from our schools foundation. Now, on the expenditure side, our expenditure model projects $48.4 million that include $18 million in certificated salaries, $8 million in classified salaries, and $11 million in employee benefits. Staff is currently still coding some additional positions in math, dual language immersion, science positions, and the benefits of those positions into this expenditure model amounting to about $1 million or 2% of the expenditures, which is within the margin of error. Staff has until 72 hours before the next board meeting to take another snapshot of projected expenditures and revise the numbers for board approval. Also, books and supplies are projected to be $1.4 million with operating expenses at $6.7 million. and debt services for the COP, which is the certificate of participation loan at $466,000 and $400. Oops. Okay, on this slide, we're looking at the two contributions we make from general fund. And like almost all school districts in the state of California, the district continues to make general fund contributions to cover the costs of special education. For the 23-24 fiscal year, special education would need $4.7 million from general fund contributions. Also, routine maintenance would need $1.4 million in general fund contributions. Oops. Okay.
Dr. Lin,
Yes.
the debt service is a COP right now still fixed rate or the?
Yeah, we got it fixed to 5%, and then it will change near the end of the term. There's a schedule we follow. Yes, it was locked
Based
into.
on the right now interest rate.
Right.
Is higher, is that they will adjust?
No, it's fixed. We got it fixed.
Mhm.
So let me show you ending balance. If you see COP right there. Oh, no, that's right here. That service right there, the last line.
Yeah.
You're going to see that is the amount we're budgeting. Okay, so it's fixed. It's not going to oscillate with the markets. Okay. And then we have the some of the key components of the ending fund balance. This includes the 3% designated for economic uncertainties as required by state statute. We have assigned amounts as well as committed amounts. Also, last year's Board of Education committed $8 million to meet the 10% reserve cap. And our district is about average in the state in terms of the percentage of funds in the ending fund balance. Okay, so as we've seen in the May revision presentation last time, we continue to have multiple opportunities to revise the district budget throughout the year. The budget is a model. It's based on funding factors and projected expenditures. Although the budget presented today contains the bulk of what the 23-24 budget will look like, staff will continue to work on refining the projections for a final budget report for board approval when we meet on June 27th. The budget won't be final until it is adopted by the board and turned into the county before July 1st. After the budget is adopted, if there are significant changes, we present a 45-day revision. Otherwise, our first interim report will be presented on or before December 15th, and our second interim will be presented by March 15th. And this concludes the presentation, the budget presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
What is your assumption for the 24 to 25 the enrollment?
Oh, enrollment?
Is that you?
You're still doing the average, right?
Yes, we're still doing the 3-year average. We're taking advantage of that.
So since the K, I think K grade increase, do you adjust the more like optimistic maybe increase?
That has been factored in the revenues model projections. The increase in TK and K this past year, the 2 elementary sites, has been factored in. And you're going to see that there is, let me see if this is in there. TK inclusive, this is per. There we go. Total projected ADA, and then there is on line 3, total CBEDS enrollment projection. And those are the numbers that we have right now. And we're making final, once we get to June 27th, you're going to get the final snapshot.
So right now we put a 2784.
Right.
So you think we're plus or minus when the next month the finalize?
So we're going to take whatever data we have. It may not even change, but then we have an opportunity. If let's say we adopt this and something major happens, we have 45 days to do another revision. Yeah.
It looks like the projections for 24-25 and 25-26 are that enrollment is leveling off. We won't have accurate enrollment information until mid-August for
Right,
this school year.
yes,
And so it's really difficult to tell. And again, this is just a projection.
Right.
It's not actual.
CBEDS is the California Basic Educational Data System. It's captured on the first Wednesday of October.
Mhm.
And we use past data, but last year we had a really good set of data, meaning higher enrollment. But then higher enrollment doesn't immediately translate to higher ADA. And ADA is captured by P1 and P2. P2 is later in the spring.
The last time I mentioned and I tried to address at our board retreat, but I didn't, but maybe it's too early, but because right now some of the citizens they are doing for ADU. So actually this is related to whether we need to review our policy. So then the one parcel can be the two family, or that will be effect to the number. So well, this is the future assignment.
Yeah.
I think we need to review, but I am I'm thinking maybe the 2025 to 26 maybe may increase a little bit.
That would be a great problem to have. And so any resident students would automatically be eligible to enroll in San Marino schools, even though they're in an ADU. It doesn't matter. If they're residents, if they live in the city within our district boundaries, they can automatically come to our schools. So I think you're right. And I am hopeful that as many people in San Marino as possible will take advantage of that.
Right. And one thing I know, the enrollment number here, I was debating on putting it on or not because we're funded based on ADA. That enrollment number I know for sure is off by a little. And I'm gonna, the next time when I present this, it will have the right enrollment, the CBEDS number. We don't get funded by CBEDS.
Right, but typically there's very little difference
Right.
between the average daily attendance and our actual enrollment numbers because we have excellent attendance in San Marino, which is not always the case in other school districts. There's a big gap, but here there's very little difference.
Yeah. And with that, the ADA, projected total ADA, that is accurate. I know for sure that's accurate. And oops. So that number will most likely not change when I present it again on June 27th.
I think Mrs. Strong had a question.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm something's not making sense to me. So in the proposed budget 23-24, and then next to that projected budget 24-25 and 25-26, the revenue is 48 and then 50, and then you've got ADA at 2759, 2789, but your CBEDS is at 2817 for both years.
Right. It's because of the cost of living adjustment increase. COLA.
The CBEDS projection, but the CBEDS enrollment projection is the same despite your projected ADA being lower.
Projected ADA is lower. Let's see.
Wouldn't your CBEDS be lower?
CBEDS 280, 2817.
Right.
Right. I was debating about putting that line in because CBEDS doesn't affect the budget.
Right.
We're funded based on ADA.
Right.
CBEDS allows us to staff.
Got it.
So enrollment helps us with the staffing.
Okay.
It doesn't affect funding.
Well, but then that matters because our enrollment is where our budget, 80% of our budget, I mean, not our enrollment, our staffing, 80% of our staffing goes into our enrollment. So are we sort of staffing up a little bit? And like, I anticipating that the next year is sort of, that's the level we're at.
We look at our needs in the actual year that we're in. So over the summer, like we're still looking at our numbers in July. And if we need to hire an additional teacher because we have more elementary students than originally projected, we can pivot and make that happen.
Right.
So we don't always, I mean, we're not going to hire all of our staff based on P2 or our CBEDS enrollment prior to the kids actually registering.
So when, right, so and that makes sense for when we're talking about 23-24 for sure. So when we're looking at 24, 25 and 25, 26. I mean, they're projected, but they're not, I mean, they're kind of a little bit monopoly, right? Like
Right.
we're not exactly sure what the numbers are. And so those are just really estimates.
Right, that's correct.
This is totally a model.
Yeah.
And Dr. Richter and I, we've been going back and forth because her department handles enrollment. And she needs the data for the LCAP.
Right.
And I'm like, I need the enrollment data because then I could calculate, make these projections. So it's an art right here.
Right.
It's a snapshot in time.
And it's gonna change, I promise.
Right. And then this is the last year we have the rolling average, right?
It may not be the last year.
They're still
don't know
talking.
for sure.
Right. I was thinking that last year was the last year.
Right,
And then,
yeah.
so there was an update. I was like, okay, I gotta let the board know about this. And
Okay.
of course, we're gonna take advantage of the 3 average.
Mhm.
You know, if that's higher, that's bringing in more revenue. We could
Right.
calculate more revenue.
Yeah, so there's a lot of variables involved in this, and this is like Dr. Lynn said, just a model.
Yeah.
And it is, a precursor to what is submitted to the county by the end of June, right, which the board has to adopt. So you're gonna see that it's not gonna look a lot different probably, right, what they get at the next board meeting.
I hope there are no more surprises. Last year, there was a
Probably
big surprise.
Yeah,
But it's okay. I mean, even if they surprise us, we're gonna update the public accordingly. Good news, SB 101 passed today and the legislature adopted
Right.
the budget, the governor's proposal. That's gonna factor into, so that gives us a few more days to
Yeah.
put one together. And I mean, the numbers, I anticipate the numbers not changing too
Right.
much.
And we don't see, I noticed, and I assume it's because we just don't have the number for the Prop 28 money. And we have no
Yeah,
idea what
so-
that is.
Prop 28, okay,
go ahead.
Prop 28, we don't even know where, okay, so Prop 28, this is the arts, music.
Yes,
It's not the discretionary block grant. This is the 1% of the
Right.
Prop 98.
Right.
And so we're looking at about maybe, so we're 400, what is it, $48 million. We're looking at $480,000, which is about the range of what we get in lottery
Mhm.
revenues. It's not significant, but it does make a little impact, right? A 1% impact. The plans are required from each of the sites. We don't know if the money is going to go directly to the sites or if it's going to go to the district first, and then we have to
Mhm.
divvy it up. So we don't know how it's funded. This is the first year they're going to do it. And we're going to look for direction from the county as they know more.
but the governor's also talking about cutting and reducing the art, music, instructional materials
Yes.
block grant, saying we're giving you Prop 28 on the other side, right? So.
And they have all these restrictions around how you can use. Prop
Right.
28 money.
That's right. 80% has to be used on salaries. So
Mhm.
we were, excited when we first heard about this because we thought we were going to get both, right? And it's going to be a really rich opportunity for us to do all kinds of wonderful things, but that isn't actually coming to fruition the way we thought it was. So just know that because some people don't really know that the governor is making this reduction, and they're super excited because they're hearing that Prop 28 passed. And so we're going to have to educate the community on what that actually means in this budget cycle. I'm sure Dr. Lynn will do a fabulous job of that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Lynn, for this update on the district budget and for your work. Certificate of signatures. At this time, Dr. Michael Lynn will present on the certificate of signatures for 2023, 2024.
Thank you, President Ryan. Item 13A is an annual routine item for the board to delegate appropriate authorization for district and site administrators to sign contracts and process warrants and salary payments. It is recommended that the board approve the 2023-24 certification of signatures authorization for staff to send to the County Office of Education.
Do I have a motion?
I move, so moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Roll call. Mrs. Lamb,
Aye.
Mrs. Gill,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan is an aye. So the motion to approve 2023-24 certification of signatures has been passed. At this time, I will again turn it over to Dr. Lynn, who will present the recommendation for the Kathy Fiscus Memorial relocation. I also want to thank Kylie, and you've been waiting here all this time for this. Oh. You started asking questions and I didn't know what you were doing. I thought maybe you were getting bored. And Mr. Payne, thank you so much for waiting. Is it past your bedtime, I think? Yeah, it is mine too. So thank you for waiting. I so apologize. But I want to at this time turn it over to Dr. Lynn.
Thank you, President Ryan. The next action item is to relocate the Kathy Fiscus Memorial. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the replacement of the existing plaque, installation onto a more prominent boulder, and relocation to the east end of the football field. Staff has visited the existing and recommended locations and determined that the project is
Oh.
feasible. Also, west. That's right. It is
Yeah, let's
west.
not put it in the wrong location.
Okay.
Again.
We know exactly where it is.
Yeah.
It's between the football signposts.
Okay.
Right.
So was there a look, sorry for interrupting, was there a look, I know when you just said boulder, right? Was there a look to put it flat in terms of, if there could be a freak accident and somebody, runs into it, plows into it, is there any consideration of that?
We looked at the current location is actually more of a trip hazard than the proposed location. The current location is by the softball field area, and it is, you could tell that the lettering has been eroded away by people who have stepped on it or tripped on it. So having it straddle between the two posts is actually better. But of course, we're going to look at other possibilities where somebody might trip, and we want to minimize that.
Oh, well, because track and field, other people use the facility too. And I've seen where the big mat is put right between the goalposts. So I just want to make sure that we've looked at all of the liability and all of that.
Right. To reduce, minimize the liability as much as possible,
yes.
while also presenting the plaque in a way that's more prominent.
Yeah.
So Mr. Bill Payne and Kylie's here too. They're in the
Okay.
audience in case you have any questions for them.
Does the board have any questions?
We just want to make note that this is at no expense to the school district, right?
That is,
Or is that not the case anymore?
so the materials, and I think Mr. Payne, you're going to be working with the community members of the community to raise funds for this. The district will provide labor though, because we want to do it. We have to be the ones handling this. So we will provide the labor.
That'd be okay? Bill, is that okay? We're gonna do the labor and you guys gonna fundraise? Okay, perfect. So if there are no other comments or questions, okay, we don't have any questions for you guys. Okay, so was that an action item?
Yes.
Okay, that's an action item, so I'm gonna do roll call. May I have a motion? May I have a motion to?
Move to approve the Kathy Fiscus Memorial relocation to the west end of the football field.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Chun. Thank you, Mr. Chang. And so with that roll call vote, Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Gill.
Aye.
Mrs. Chun. And Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so the motion has passed for the relocation and replacement of the existing Kathy Fiscus plaque. All right, with that. Okay,
Thank you for
good
hanging
night.
in there.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Come back anytime. Well, I know they'll be back because
We'll still be here.
Yeah, we have to show pictures, yes.
But we'll do that at the beginning.
Thank you so much. All right. Resolution number 12 to authorize the execution and delivery of an energy services contract for the acquisition, construction, installation of energy conservation facilities and an equipment purchase agreement with respect to the implementation of proposed air quality improvement and energy efficiency measures made possible by ESSER 3 funds, restricted federal funds. Wow. This is hard to read at the end of the evening at 1:45. And you guys have been wonderful hanging in there, and you were also here. So I'm gonna actually call for Dr. Lynn or you guys to answer any questions. Are there any questions at this time?
One question.
Okay.
For the warranty, does the warranty begin from the time that the work is performed or approved or permitted? I'm just concerned if there's a backlog on the permit process or anything.
Warranty on the equipment or the warranty of the whole project?
The whole project.
The project. Okay, I'm going to turn it to Frank.
After installation, do we have an idea of, is there going to be permits that are going to need to be, like, is there an approval of the work that gets signed off or anything like that?
Yes, I mean, we have to go through DSA approvals, so that's part of this process, and that's part of the presentation that we did last time, talked about. We're gonna be, as soon as we get approved of this project, we'll be out on site in the next few weeks, starting in that analysis, and then working with our structural architects to get through that DSA process with the state.
So is the DSA operating in a timely fashion these days in terms of that final approval?
We're planning to have it based off, I'll say two things. Number one, our team is very experienced with this, having done 1,100 of these projects in the state of California. So, and we also work with a firm that actually helps support DSA when they get backlog, to actually approve plans. So we feel very confident. The goal of this project is to actually start construction next summer. So that'll give us enough time to go through the DSA process, order the equipment, have it here on site to be able to do the construction next year.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve resolution number 12?
Move to approve resolution 12.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Lamb. Yes, okay. So roll call, Mrs. Lamb,
Aye.
Mrs. Gill,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. So motion passes for resolution number 12. At this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Michael Lin to present the award of design build contract to ABM for HVAC project at SMUSD and Valentine.
Thank you, President Ryan. This is the last action item for this evening. 13D is to award design build contract to ABM for HVAC project at Huntington Middle School and Valentine. It is recommended that the Board of Education award a contract to ABM as the lowest and best value bidder for San Marino Unified School District bid number 2023 DB HVAC S1 in the amount of $900,000 funded by one-time ESSER 3 federal funds.
Did you like I made you read it instead of? All right, with that, is there any further discussion or questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve the award of design build contract to ABM for HVAC project at HMS and Valentine using ESSER 3
I
funds?
move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
I second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong. With that roll call, Mrs. Lamb,
Aye.
Mrs. Gill,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan is an aye, and so with that, you guys are set. All right. All right. Board Superintendent, are there any discussion items at this time?
No, I just want to express my sincere appreciation for everybody staying alert and awake. It's not quite yet 10, so thank you for your continued support. And I'd also like to express my appreciation to my wonderful executive team who works tirelessly. And they're amping up for the summer. Ironically, it is one of our busiest seasons at the district office. And so as you can see, Dr. Richer with her LCAP and Dr. Lynn with his budget and Dr. Rose with his recruitment and having to hire people and process retirements and health and welfare benefits. And it's just been incredibly busy. So thank you for keeping this district running so beautifully. We appreciate you, your professionalism and your expertise. And thanks for your support.
All right.
I have a question. So
Are we
Dr. Lin-
adjourned or you're still on?
yes, they are, yeah.
He's still on. Okay.
Oh, it's okay. So for the HMS, the fence is finished or?
It's not fully finished. It hasn't been painted yet. It is a project that has taken longer than we had anticipated. For the high school, we do have another option that isn't as aesthetic, but certainly we're looking at speed, price, as well as the high quality.
And the second question, if we're in the message, so the San Marino Community Center, so the setback.
Yes.
Is right, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a setback. It's over 7 feet in one of their AutoCAD renderings. I was able to get a map. And it's more than 7 feet is not gonna create an issue for any of the vehicles in that driveway.
Okay.
All right. With that, we are adjourned.